I messed up my back. Welcome back to the Learn English podcast, the podcast teaching English in context so you can learn naturally. On today's episode, I want to do something a little different. On today's episode, I want to tell you a story, and it is a very personal story that I have been dealing with for the past year. I have not talked about this on the podcast at all. I don't think I've mentioned it at all, but I have really been struggling with something this year. And before we get started, I really just want to say that I think it's going to have a good ending. I don't want anybody to be worried. This is not clickbait or something that I want people to worry about, but it is a personal story for me, and I want to use it to help you with your English, to help you with your listening comprehension, with building your English vocabulary, and of course, just improving your English abilities overall. So if you want to hear about this personal story, this thing that I have been struggling with this year, then please follow along because we're about to begin. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to look at the description of this podcast episode. There you will find helpful links like how to take a class with me, and you will also find the vocabulary list. This is a list of the words and phrases that I used in the episode so you can take them and build your English vocabulary. Now let's talk about this story. This has been something that I have dealt with for the last year and actually a little bit longer than that. And it is an injury that I sustained last year. So, a few things before we start. I have had back pain, some pain in my lower back for most of my life. Even when I was a child, I would have really bad pain in my back. And when I lied down flat in my bed at night, I would feel like something was burning in my back. So you will hear people describe a pain as a burning pain. What they mean is that it feels like something is on fire. It feels like they're being burned and they have this really intense pain. And that's what I would have in my back when I was a child and really all the way through my 20s. I had that pain for probably 20 years, and I just learned to live with it. So learned to live with means that you don't really complain about it. You don't really do anything about it. You just keep living your life. So if someone learns to live with something, some type of injury, that means that they figure out how to keep living their life and they just kind of ignore whatever is happening. If you haven't watched or listened to our previous podcast episodes, you might not know that I teach English online to people who are learning it as a second language, but I also teach high school. I teach at a public school here in the United States, and every year that I have been a teacher, I have gotten really bad pain from my back going down my leg. There is a nerve that comes out of your spinal cord and goes down your leg, and that's called the sciatic nerve. So when you have irritation of that nerve and you have pain going down your leg, that is called sciatic pain. And I have had that every single year that I have been a teacher at the end of the school year. So our school years end the first week of June, and usually the end of April or the beginning of May is when I get this pain. And sometimes I start limping. Sometimes I have trouble walking. My leg always hurts and my back always hurts. And again, that is something that I have just learned to live with. After a while, though, I started realizing that this probably was abnormal. So abnormal means not normal, the opposite of normal, right? We probably shouldn't have really bad back pain for 20 years. That's probably something that's abnormal. So I realized it was abnormal and I went to see a physical therapist, and I also went and saw a chiropractor. So a chiropractor is someone who helps with your spine, who's supposed to help with this type of issue. If you have watched or listened to our previous podcast episodes, you might have seen an episode that I did where I talked about fitness vocabulary, and we talked about different sayings and different words that are used to describe exercise and working out, physical fitness. I'll leave a link to that episode, but in that episode, I said that I really am not the type of person who likes to go running, who likes to do a lot of cardio, but I really enjoy weightlifting. And that's true. I was weightlifting about 5 to 6 days a week. I like lifting weights. I find it to be an enjoyable type of exercise and something that I really liked doing, which is why I did it so often. Now that comes into play with this story. Last year, in April of 2024, I started getting the pain in my back and in my leg at the end of our school year. And I went and saw my chiropractor, and he worked a little bit in trying to help relieve that pain. And during this time, I was continuing to work out. So I was working out a lot. I was lifting a lot of weights, and I was dealing with this pain. And then in June, we got some rescue kittens. So when you talk about an animal and you say rescue, that means that you are helping them, that you are either getting them from a rescue organization or that you yourself are the people who took them in and brought them into your house. And so that's what I mean here. There were some kittens that were outside and they were brought to my house, and they were rescue kittens. They were kittens who were very, very sick. And since I was helping to take care of them and give them their medication, I was the person giving them their medication. I had to get down on the ground and hold them and give them their medication and stand back up. And if you've ever had back pain, you might know that going down on the floor and then standing up can be very difficult to do when your back hurts. When you have an injury to your back, standing up and sitting down and lying down, those can all be very difficult to do. I was taking care of these kittens and giving them their medication, and that was irritating my back. I also had to bathe them because they were very dirty. They had fleas, they had mites, they were just in very bad shape, as we would say. So bad shape means poor condition. They were very sick. I was a little bit worried that they might not survive because they were very, very ill. So when you put all of that together, I had this history of back pain. My back was hurting because it was the end of the school year. I was having these kittens that I was having to take care of, and that was hurting my back. And then I was weightlifting on top of that, and that can also injure your back. So there is this particular move in weightlifting called a deadlift. And a deadlift works out your back and your lower body. If you don't do it correctly, you could get injured. So what happened was in June of 2024, I was deadlifting and I was trying to do a workout relatively quickly. I was trying to get it done pretty quickly because I knew I had to go take care of the kittens and I had to go clean my house and I had all these things I wanted to do. So I was going to work out, but pretty fast. And I was doing a deadlift. And when I stood up from the deadlift, I felt my back seize up. Seize up is a term that we use to describe feeling that your muscles are very tight, that you're having a muscle spasm, that your muscles are constricting very, very tightly. So you will hear people say that their back seized up. If someone is a runner who is running a lot, you might hear that their calf seized up or their hamstring or their leg because they're using those muscles and maybe they injure those muscles and those muscles get very, very tight. So I stood up from the deadlift and I felt my back seize up. And I knew that was not a good thing. I kept moving because I've heard that before. When your muscles seize up, you want to keep moving, you want to keep them warm, you don't want to lie down because it makes it worse. So I kept moving, I kept walking, and then about an hour later, I noticed that one of my cats, not one of the kittens, but my cats that I actually have, vomited. My cat always vomits. I had to go and lean over and clean the vomit that was on the floor. And when I stood up from that, I immediately felt really bad back pain, like the worst pain I've had. I took some pain medicine and I lied down, but I knew this was not going to be that good. However, if you know me, if you ever meet me, or if you've maybe learned something from this podcast, is that I am very optimistic. So optimistic means that you have a very hopeful outlook, that you think things are going to go well. I was very optimistic about this injury. I knew it wasn't good, but I thought maybe a couple of days. Maybe a couple of days, I'll be back to normal. Everything will be okay. And so I was going to work at the time. The school year had ended, but we have summer school here in the United States, which is classes during the summer. So I was teaching summer school and I continued to teach. And that was probably not a very good choice. In the mornings, when I would get ready to go teach these classes, I had a very, very difficult time doing anything. To get out of bed was very painful. I had to lie down on my bed to try to put my pants and my socks on because I couldn't bend over. I couldn't do it normally. And it was one of the most painful things I've done in my life, just putting my socks on, which seems a little bit ridiculous. I couldn't put my socks on without almost crying. And then I would sit in my car and I would talk to myself. So I would hype myself up. So when you hype something up, that means that you're trying to gather the energy and you're trying to make something easier, something more exciting maybe, or something easier to do. So I would hype myself up, which means I would kind of gather my energy just to get out of the car and walk into the classroom. Because that was not that long of a walk, probably a minute long walk, but it was so painful that I almost couldn't do it. So I had to hype myself up. I had to gather my energy and convince myself that I could do it. And then I would get out of the car and then walk into the building. After a couple of days, I went and saw the doctor, and they told me that maybe it would take a couple weeks, maybe a couple months. It was kind of impossible to tell. They didn't really know. So I just had to keep living, right? I just had to learn to live with it, at least for a little bit. And after a month, I noticed that the pain was getting worse and the pain was becoming more intense. So more intense means more painful. The pain was getting more painful and it was now going down my entire leg. And I started having numbness on my leg. So numbness is when you have a loss of sensation. You can't feel stuff. So certain parts of my leg, I didn't have any feeling. I could touch my skin and it didn't feel like I was touching my skin. If I didn't look, I couldn't tell if something was touching my skin or not because I didn't have that sensation. My leg was numb in certain areas. So I called the doctor again. They ordered an x-ray. Everything looked fine on the x-ray, but the pain was still there. And by now I was unable to even sit. I could not sit. So just sitting in a chair was horrible. It was horrible. So when I was teaching these classes, I had to constantly get up and stand, and I was breathing pretty fast. My heart was beating pretty fast just because I was in so much pain all day, and I was taking some pain relievers that you can buy at a pharmacy that you don't need a prescription for. I was taking those, but I was just in so much pain. And so I called my doctor again. And this time I had a video appointment. And so they gave me a couple days off work, but only like 3 days off work. So I ended up going into the urgent care. There's an ER, which is an emergency room, and then an urgent care. ER is usually more busy and is usually for things that are more serious. Let's say you're in a bad accident or something happens, maybe you're having a heart attack, something very, very bad is happening. Usually that's when you want to go to an ER. When something is wrong, but maybe not life-threatening, not something that you have to get treated for immediately, you could go to an urgent care. Usually the urgent cares are a little bit faster than the ER. I say usually because it really depends. But I went to the urgent care because I could not walk. Every time I tried to even take a few steps, I would fall. My leg could not support me, and I was crying because I was in so much pain. It was so bad, the worst pain I've ever had in my entire life. And they ordered an MRI. So an MRI is a type of image where you can see what's happening. And when they did that, they saw that the disc in my spine, actually multiple discs in my spine, were herniated. So a hernia is when something moves out of place and kind of goes into an area it shouldn't be. In your spine, you have these discs that are in between your bone, that's soft, squishy material that's supposed to help support your spine and absorbs shock when you're moving. And in my case, 3 of the discs had spilled out. Kind of think of like toothpaste coming out of a tube, or a jelly donut is what a lot of the doctors keep saying, like the jelly in the center of the donut is coming out. And that's what happened. So 3 of the discs herniated. The material that's inside the disc actually came out, and they were pressing on the nerves of my spine. And that is why I feel that burning pain down my leg. And it's why I don't have all of the feeling in my leg, why my leg is so numb. There was thought originally that my body would just be able to heal itself, but sadly it has not. I've had some medication injections, I've had a lot of physical therapy, and the herniation actually got worse. It doubled in size. So in September, when they read my MRI, it was 8 millimeters. And then when I got my repeat MRI in February, my second MRI, it was 1.4 centimeters. I know it's not exactly doubled, but almost, right? Almost doubled in size. It was pretty bad. It's been pretty bad. So I currently am going to have surgery. I don't know when. I might have surgery already by the time this episode comes out. I don't know. Maybe. It's been very difficult. Hopefully, it'll be very soon. Hopefully, I will have had surgery by the time this episode comes out, but I don't know. I've never had surgery before. I've never broken a bone. I've never spent a night in a hospital. I don't take any medication. I am normally a very healthy person. I normally have no problems except for, I guess, this back pain has been a constant problem in my life. But the surgeon has told me once I get surgery, the pain in my leg will be gone. And after about a month, I'll be able to move around a little bit more. It takes about a month to start recovering and being able to start walking more normally. And then after 3 months, my life should go back to normal and I should be able to live my life like I've been able to before all of this. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping I have surgery. I hope the surgery goes well and I can get my life back because it's been really difficult. And that really leads to what I want to end with. If you are someone who has listened to this podcast for the last however many episodes that we've had, I don't even know right now how many episodes we're on, but if you're someone who's been around since the beginning of the podcast, just first of all, thank you. Really thank you for listening to this little podcast that I do to try to help people learn English. If you've been listening for at least a year, you might have noticed that there were periods of time where we didn't have any episodes. And that really has been because of how bad my back was. When I had the injury and it got worse in July, like I said, I couldn't even sit, so that made recording impossible. I had some episodes that I had already recorded that I was able to at least edit and post, but I couldn't do new episodes. And how I edited my episodes was I took my laptop and I lied down on the ground and I edited that way because I literally could not sit. I could not sit in a chair. It was way too painful for me. So those were some gaps in our recording, and we have had them during this past year, during times when I was just in too much pain and I couldn't sit, I couldn't record. It was too hard physically for my body to do. So I apologize. I apologize for not being able to do an episode every week. That always has been my intention. I have tried to do that, but it just was impossible for me this past year to always have a new episode. I tried to do as many episodes as I could. I tried to post everything, but you might have noticed that we haven't had every single week, we haven't had a new episode. And in those cases, it was because I was in so much pain. You also might have noticed I have not really been on social media because just recording the episodes and editing them and posting everything is about as much as I can do. In terms of sitting for a long period of time, that's about as much as I can do. I just have not been able to have the energy to do all of the social media stuff and all of the posts on Instagram that I enjoy doing that I used to do last year before my injury. I did those with my injury and then taking care of the rescue kittens, which I still have. I have not been able to find someone who will adopt them. So I still have these kittens in my house that are now, I guess, grown cats. Maybe they're not really kittens anymore. I still have them. So with everything that's been happening of my injury and the kittens and trying to deal with my health insurance and going to physical therapy and doctor's appointments, I just really haven't been able to keep up with everything like I wanted to. So hopefully after the surgery, after my recovery, hopefully sometime I will be able to get back on social media and do my regularly scheduled episodes every week. I'm really hoping that this coming year is going to be a lot better than this past year for us. And that all brings me to what I said at the beginning of the episode. I said that I messed up my back, and that is something that we say in English when we injure ourselves. So you might hear someone say that they injured their back or that they hurt their back. Those are all normal ways of saying it, but a more colloquial way, a more slang way maybe of saying it is that you messed up your back. And you can use these sentence structures if you do have an injury, not something that somebody else did to you, but an injury that you did. We would call that a self-sustained injury, something that you did to cause this. You can use these sentence stems. I injured my blank. I hurt my blank. I messed up my blank. So let's say if it's your knee, I hurt my knee. I injured my knee. I messed up my knee. Messed up has a little bit more serious connotation to it. If you say you messed something up, that really means that you did a serious injury, something more serious. If you just maybe got a paper cut on your finger, you're not going to say you messed up your finger. A paper cut is so small, it's hardly anything, right? But if you really injured your finger, let's say you're cooking and you're chopping with a knife and you slice off the tip of your finger, you can say that you messed up your finger. That's a very big injury. So for me, this injury has been almost an entire year. It has been incredibly severe. It's been the worst pain I've ever had in my entire life. I can say that I messed up my back. My back is messed up. Now, I hope you are not messed up. I hope you didn't mess some part of your body up. But if you did, you can use that to express whatever part of you is injured. You can use that expression to convey how serious that injury is. If you have listened until the end, if you are a regular listener, thank you so much. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider leaving us a rating on whatever app you're using to listen to this podcast on. You can also tell a friend, tell a family member, tell someone about this podcast so we can continue to grow our audience. You can follow us on social media at Learn English Pod. The website is learnenglishpod.com. And remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next episode when it comes out next week. Until then, keep learning English.